Welcome back. We're in a series on mastering the art of communication. And as we discussed before, communication is shared meaning, not just shared words. George Bernard Shaw said, "The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has actually taken place." So in the last session, we talked about active listening, and we gave you 4 strategies to improve your active listening skills. There are many other strategies, but we just highlighted 4 for you. This session, we're going to talk about empathetic listening. And Daryl's going to share with us some principles on that.
So there's a difference between active listening and empathetic listening. However, you can't have empathetic listening without active listening. You can have active listening without empathetic listening, but empathetic listening takes your communication to a whole nother level. It's one thing to have active listening where we're engaged and I'm active, I'm a participant, whether I'm saying anything or not. I'm active in the conversation. You may be doing all the talking right now, but I'm an active participant if I'm active in my listening and I'm engaged. I've turned my body position, my eye contact, we've gotten rid of distractions, I'm paying attention, I'm actively participating. Empathetic listening is a whole nother level where it's a level of intentional understanding. So empathy is the capacity to understand or feel what another person is experiencing from within their framework or their frame of reference. That is, it's the capacity to place oneself into the position of the other. So when we're communicating, my intent as an empathetic listener is to intentionally try to understand. Not just hear, not just listen, but I want to understand. But I don't want to understand with my frame of reference. I don't want to understand through my lens and my context. I'm trying to understand, and this is where it's really difficult because we have to set ourselves aside and try to understand through the context and through the frame of reference of the other person.
So it's really like putting yourself in their shoes.
Right.
Trying to see from their perspective.
How did they come to their conclusion? What was it? And if it's in conflict and those kinds of things, it's really difficult because I have to stop being defensive and I have to start listening to understand where you're coming from in that. So we want to give you some principles to practice. These are 5 principles to practice. And the reason we're putting practice in here is because they're just that. They're skills. Skills can be learned. Skills can be developed. Skills, it's not something that, well, I just am a bad communicator. I guess I'm always going to be a bad communicator. But this is a skill, and it's something that we need to practice. Now, I want you to think about something, though. We've often heard practice makes perfect. And I tend to disagree with that. I don't think practice makes perfect. I think practice makes permanent. Practice makes permanent. So in other words, if I have a bad golf swing and I keep practicing that bad golf swing, all I'm doing is developing that rut to where my golf swing is just going to be a perfectly bad golf swing.
Yeah.
So if I want to practice something, I want to practice the right swing. I want to learn and develop the right swing, which means if I've had a bad swing, I have to learn a new swing, but I have to intentionally break what I've been practicing because I've made it permanent in my life. I just react the way I react. I respond the way I respond. I do the things I do because that's how I've always done it.
Right.
So when I start practicing a new swing, I've got to intentionally break my old patterns and break my old cycles, which means I've got to work harder on the front end of intentionally thinking about what I'm going to do, which becomes very important if you want to go to this next level of communication. You're going to master the art of communication. This will help you in so many areas, but think about this with your relationship. If I first want to have empathy and want to understand, I've got to understand that it's not about me. It's not about you. Take yourself out of that for a minute and really come to a place that we understand that in this conversation, it's not about me. My goal is about understanding you, so I have to be able to enter the conversation on purpose with an idea and a mindset that it's not about me. And sometimes you gotta enter that conversation just like that. It's not about me. Ready, go. you know, and in your mind you're saying, it's not about me. Listen actively and hear and listen to what she's saying, but not just the surface of what she's saying. Go deeper. And so practice number 1 is it's not about me. Practice number 2 is biting your tongue. Biting your tongue. Now, I have a quote that I say often, that the sign of maturity are the holes in your tongue. You think about the child who is immature and they just, blah, it's whatever, you know, they're just going to go and they're going to say, they're going to speak. And
I know a lot of grown-ups like that.
Yeah. And it comes out of their immaturity. The sign of maturity, as you grow and you age, and not just chronological age, but as you mature,
yeah,
you develop a better sense of just bite your tongue.
More filters.
More filters.
Yeah, develop more filters.
Right. So sometimes this takes a lot of work, because in the middle of this conversation, you might have the answer. You might have a suggestion. You might have, and so you're just wanting to jump in because you've been thinking, you've been listening to reply, like we talked about last session. You've been listening to reply instead of listening to understand. If you're listening to understand, you can bite your tongue and continue to listen and continue to draw out what the speaker is trying to say. This leads us to the next practice. The next practice is to eliminate judgment. You kind of get a sense of how difficult these are in conversation and communication, especially if it's emotionally charged and those kinds of things. It's not always easy, because you might have a judgment. You might disagree. You might have all kinds of opinions about what the person is saying. But if you really want to empathize and you really want to understand, and that's the key. The key is to understand. It's a fundamental need that we have. It's a fundamental need to be heard and understood. And if our goal is to, bless you, if our goal is to understand, then we've got to eliminate judgment. Now, you're probably already kind of catching how intentional all of this is. You're not just going to enter a conversation, bless you.
Thank you.
You're not just going to enter a conversation and automatically enter the conversation, oh, it's not about me. Unless you think on purpose, it's not about me. Mm-hmm. There's times when a thought's going to go through your head and you're going to have to intentionally think, Daryl, bite your tongue. You can say your own name. Don't say, Daryl, bite your tongue. You have to think. Yep. Just bite your tongue. Sign of maturity, or the holes in my tongue right now. Mm-hmm. Be mature. Mm-hmm. Bite your tongue.
Because how many times have we not done that? You say something, and even as it's coming out of your mouth, you shouldn't be saying it.
Should have bit my tongue.
Yeah, should not have said it. This is not going to go well. This is not going to help. This is just going to make things worse.
Well, and as soon as it comes out of your mouth, what happens to the understanding of the other person? So here's what can happen real quick. That person begins to shut down. That person begins to stop sharing at the level that they were sharing. Mm-hmm. Have you ever had that person who you just felt like you could share anything with? And it was like, you were just like, they just get me. They understand me. It's a person that you can open up with.
Sometimes, like, you'll say, I've had that happen. Mm-hmm. And then I say to that person, I don't know why I just told you all that stuff,
right?
But it just comes out easily.
And what did you feel?
I felt listened to.
Felt listened to. You felt heard.
Yeah.
You felt safe.
Yeah.
That there was not going to be a judgment. That there wasn't going to be a criticism. There wasn't going to be our next one is don't try to fix it. If you intentionally practice this idea, sometimes, especially as guys, we just want to fix everything.
Right.
You know, she doesn't want you to fix it. She just wants you to listen. She just wants to be heard and understood. I think that's the key.
Yes.
It's not just she wants to be heard.
Yeah.
She wants to be understood. Well, as soon as I start trying to fix it, she doesn't come as often to talk as deep.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty soon all your relational conversations are up here. And you're not developing intimacy in your relationship. Why don't you ever share stuff with me? Well, because as soon as I share something with you, you try to fix it, and as soon as you try to fix it, it's like,
what's the use? Why should I bother
Right.
telling you?
right.
Yeah.
Why can't you just listen to me? We're seeking for somebody to listen. Empathetic listening is trying to understand where they're coming from. This may require then for you to be a little more open-minded. Open-minded. If you practice an idea of being open-minded, that's a concept where you're entering. I already know what I know. If I'm open-minded, I could actually learn something. There's a lot of different possibilities that are right, but sometimes because I'm so closed-minded, it's my way. That's it. I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear another perspective.
Yeah.
And if I really listen to you, I might come to a place of going, I disagree, and now what do? We've got conflict. So we shut down conversations real quick. So if you practice, again, all these, catch it, intentional practice. These require a different level of mastery in communication. It's one thing to be able to turn my body, make eye contact, set distractions aside, and have a conversation. It's a whole nother level to get deeper. Now, but think about this. Think about what happens in your relationship when you do this. When I open up at that level, when we have conversations and we're heard and understood, and why is this so difficult? Because it's vulnerable.
Yeah. I was going to say there usually tears are involved at some point if we're in that type of a conversation.
Yeah.
And it's
It's
not
hard.
comfortable sometimes.
It's hard.
Yeah.
But where does the
But it's
relationship?
necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where does the relationship go?
It goes deeper,
It goes deeper.
more connected.
Mm-hmm. But you got to be vulnerable.
Right.
To really master the art of communication and maximize it in your relationship, it requires a level of vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
But man, the possibilities are crazy.
Yeah.
So with that, think about this for a minute, because we know we're talking to a lot of people who are at all kinds of different places in your relationship. We're talking to people whose relationships are broken and maybe he or she has moved out. We're talking to people who they're living in the same house, but they haven't gone below the surface for years maybe.
Yeah.
We're also possibly talking to some people who might be looking for a date. You know, it's like relationship stuff. You know what? I could use a date. Well, let me just show something with you. So this is research on empathetic listeners. Research on empathetic listeners show that empathetic listeners are more socially attractive. So think about this. You looking for a date? Listen up. Just change your listening skills. Start listening empathetically, and guess what? She or he is drawn to that.
Yeah.
So all you have to do to get a date is turn these on, turn this off, and be charming. I mean, it's just like, talk to me. Yeah, how does people are drawn to that? This research shows that the social sphere, the social dynamics of people who listen empathetically are far more rich and engaging. So it happens in your relationship. Think about this on your job, in your relationships, in all aspects of your life. Empathetic listening can take you to a whole new level.
Yeah. So
you want to master the art of communication? Communication is about shared meaning. You're not going to get shared meaning if you don't understand where he or she's coming from. Practice. Change that old rut that you've been in with that swing. Get a new communication swing and practice.
Yeah.
Practice.
If you're one of those people that says, I'm just not very good at communication. Then scrap what you've always done and start fresh with some of these ideas. See where it takes you. I think you'll be amazed.
Yeah. So we're glad you're here. The last session was active listening. This session, empathetic listening. Next session, we're going to go deeper into now maybe from the communicator side versus the listener side, and going below the surface to learn how to engage at a level that takes your relationship deeper and your communication deeper into a whole new level. We're glad you're here. Go live intentionally, love on purpose, and have an extra kind of day.
Thank you for joining us today.
Check out our website with resources to help grow your relationship at xtraomarriage.com.
That's xtraomarriage.com. Like our Facebook page and share our content with your friends on social media.
Make a decide and set your intention for an extraordinary marriage. Start today.